right, SIG Night rocks, woohoo! So, well, one of the great things about being the first presentation and being a presentation about failure is I have nothing to lose. So I'll keep it simple. We'll have a lot of fun. So, guess we're ready to kick things off. So I want to start by giving you a couple of quotes here and also showing you a couple of pictures. And some of you may recognize some of these photos because some of these photos are from the Fail blog, which is a very popular online blog that shows you all the great images of people failing. And one of the great things we like about the Fail blog is that we look at them and say, there, but the grace of God go I. So let's start a little bit. I mean, Winston Churchill said that success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And that's, I think, really the great idea about failure is we love to learn and we love failure. But there are many industries that are built on failure. The consumer packaged goods industry is a great example of an industry that's based on failure. You know, we all know about New Coke, but if you look at all of these products that Pepsi and Coke have put out, the one thing they realize is that only through failure do they actually learn what people are actually interested in. And I think one of the things that we realize is that failure is not only normal but natural. I mean, that's how kids learn, that's how babies learn, but that's also how nature works. That's the whole theory of evolution is trial and error, trying things out and failing, and that's actually just part of nature. And so one of the things that we learn is that you can't really have breakthroughs if you don't embrace and enjoy failure. As they say, you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. So one of the things we need to learn is like, well, how do we learn to embrace failure, and what's so great about failure? Well, a lot of the great innovations have certainly come from needs, but a lot of stuff has been totally accidental. The microwave, penicillin, most of the sweeteners we have, brandy, these are all things that have come from people saying, oh, we made a mistake, but wait, there's something that is useful that can come out of this mistake. And so one of the things that we should learn is that if we want to embrace failure, we have to basically learn to take smaller steps, right? Take smaller steps because you don't want to make huge mistakes. You want to basically make smaller mistakes so that you can learn from them. And this slide here is an image from the software industry really has learned how to embrace failure. Technology has been moving very, 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 very fast, almost too fast. So the whole lean startup methodology, customer development methodology is about taking a bunch of little steps, learning from them, and iterating. So we learned from this that there's really a bunch of things. We want to learn how to fail fast, which means iterate quickly. We want to be able to fail cheap, which means make smaller bets, not big bets. We want to fail often, which means don't take 6 months to learn, take a short amount to learn, and we want to fail cheap. And you know, it took a long time for many industries to learn how to fail. I mean, we have Webvan, which is a big notable failure in the dot-com industry, but Apollo 1 was a huge learning disaster for NASA. Before then, they actually had a culture where they did not want to embrace failure, and we all know what happened with Apollo 1. They learned a lot about failure. And so what we learned is that, you know, failure only works if we learn from it, right? And so we need to figure out, like, well, how do we take the things that come out of failure, the trial and error parts, the parts that aren't fatal, and learn from it? And Dr. Evelyn Crone at Leiden University, they did a brain study, and they saw that in adults, the brain is actually more active when you're learning from negative feedback. For those that are between 1 and 3 years old, actually the brain is more active when you're getting positive feedback. But that means that our brain doesn't actually learn at all. These are great images, right? So if your brain is not learning when you're failing, you have to know when you're failing. And you might think, it's like, well, it's obvious to know when we're failing, right? But actually, the brain conspires against you to learn when you're failing. And a lot of the biggest failures, like communism, Enron, the Polaroid, Lehman Brothers, it's because you have this thing called confirmation bias. You are biased against looking at the very signs that are pointing you at failure. They're telling you about failure, and you're just ignoring those things. And so it turns out that the better you are at learning how to deal with failure, the greater you have the ability to succeed. And so what you'll see is that the people who are like the biggest successes, they don't talk about their successes. They spend most of their time talking about their failures and how they learn from them and the process. We all know about Thomas Edison and his 1,000 light bulbs, but you probably don't know that Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. He said that was his biggest learning moment. And of course, there's the famous story of the fellow in the Mexican 1968 Olympics who took 2 days to complete the marathon. That's because they said they didn't pay him to start it. They told him to finish it. So one of the things about failure is that when you fail and you learn, it's better than not having tried at all, as they like to say. But part of it is that when we are conditioned in certain parts of society to fear failure. Why? Because of the physical pain of failure, or maybe the confirmation bias I talked about, humiliation or embarrassment. But the truth of the matter is that when you develop calluses against failure, you learn to actually embrace failure. And by embracing failure, you actually make success sweeter. You learn how to become more successful. You actually you try to actually seek failure. You're like, I don't want to know what the comfort is. Give me the thing that's the hardest, and I'm going to try that, and if I fail, then let me figure that out. So success is sweeter. I mean, I live in Baltimore now, but I'm originally from Chicago and Boston, and we've had a lot of failed sports teams, and we've had some sweet years, let me tell you. It was tough, this Ravens-Patriots game. But, hey, Ravens came out. Either way, right? I couldn't lose on that one. So I think one of the things I want to finish out here is this talk actually really failed because it wasn't a talk about failure at all, was it? This was really a talk about success. So the one thing I hope you get out of this is to learn that failure and learning how to learn from failure is really the best way that you could be successful. So I wish you a lot of failure in your future.